I hear them ringing all the time now, even in my sleep. I see the light when I close my eyes, the wretched green glow of impossible realms. I don't know if it's real or if it's just in my head, but what I do know is that I'm in danger. Sorry, my name's Ben, and in case something happens, I need to write this all down. I need to write what I saw, or at least think I saw. Whether you believe me or not is up to you. I know what I'm about to describe might sound crazy. I would have said that it was impossible just a while ago. I should have just walked away when I saw the red flags. I should have listened to my gut. Sometimes the job isn't worth it, regardless of the pay. Now I fear whatever I saw last night is coming for me at this very moment. I should have left the first time that I heard the bells ring. It all started 2 weeks ago. I had lost my job at what was supposed to be the last reliable employer in town, and I was looking for work. It had already been 2 months at that point since the factory had closed, and the job that I had worked at since getting out of high school had vanished. For the first time in years, I was unemployed and my savings evaporated quickly. I wasn't exactly bad with money, but I had no family, no responsibility, and I spent what I had on what I wanted. My situation was getting dire, and the town that I lived in hardly had any part-time minimum wage jobs to search through. When I was looking for places that were hiring online, I noticed that I had received a strange email. I almost deleted it out of habit, but I noticed it was a work advertisement. I decided to look at it, and my interest piqued. It read, "Now hiring security personnel for night shift at Aurora Ridge Cemetery. Call for more details. No previous security experience required." And there is an odd 800 number instead of a local area code listed below the message. I was glad to see a potential job prospect had come to me. I never thought to look for security jobs, and definitely not at a place like a cemetery. I was reluctant at first, not because I was scared of cemeteries, but because it sounded kind of weird. I wondered why a cemetery would have a night watchman at all. I figured most places would have security systems that took care of that. Despite my concern, I decided to call the number listed. The line rang for a minute before going to a voicemail, asking me to leave my information. I was just interested enough to comply, but I almost wrote it off after that, figuring they wouldn't get back to me. To my surprise, in less than 10 minutes, I received a call back. The man on the phone had an odd inflection in his voice, like an accent slightly out of time. He was polite though and sounded happy that somebody had contacted him about the offer. I had barely said hello and given my name before he enthusiastically cut me off and went into a pitch on the job.
"Oh, thank you for the call. My name is Victor Penny, and I'm so glad you're interested in working with us at Aurora Ridge. I would like to arrange a short meeting and introductory tour if you're still interested."
I was thrilled and eagerly responded, "Yes, thank you, Mr. Penny. I would love to. When can we meet?"
Well, tonight at 9:30 would work for me if that works for you."
I paused for a moment, surprised that it would be an interview the same night that I had inquired and be so late in the evening. I didn't second guess it though, and I agreed, and Mr. Penny sounded delighted as I had said yes, almost like I was doing him a favor.
"Oh, fantastic. Looking forward to seeing you here. Always happy to work with a new soul. Take care and see you then."
He hung up and I ended the call as well. Despite how odd the arrangement was, I was just happy that I might have a paycheck again. I set out at 9 p.m., leaving a bit of time to get there early, since Aurora Ridge was only a 10-minute drive from my apartment. I was surprised that I hadn't seen the place before. It seemed to be nestled out of the way, off the main road leading into town. When I first arrived, I had to double-check that I was at the right place. I kept driving a little further on a dirt road and practically into the forest. When I came upon the main gate, I was relieved. A tall iron fence across the clearing, and I read the sign by the main gate and I knew that I was there. It read, "Welcome to Aurora Ridge Cemetery, where the light of lives rests eternal." The gate was closed, and when I stepped out of my car, I was dismayed when I saw that it was locked as well. I guessed I would just have to wait until Mr. Penny was there to let me in. I looked around the grounds and saw that there were hardly any gravestones, like this lot was new and barely anybody had been interned yet. The fading sunlight cast an orange glow over the sprawling and somewhat barren cemetery, and I was impressed by the beautiful sight of the place, if not unnerved by its morbid nature. I had to admit, the darkening skies did not help. I waited for a while, and when I checked my phone, I saw that it was 9:40. I was getting worried that I had been tricked and that nobody would show up. As I nervously glanced around the area, the light faded even further and twilight glowed in the distance. Something about it was odd and it made me do a double take. I thought that I saw a strange light in the sky. It looked like it was coming from somewhere on the grounds, but further inside of the cemetery. The odd thing was that the light was not in any shade of twilight that I had ever seen. It was a sort of green like one might see in the northern lights. It stood out amongst the other colors, and the more that I stared at the shifting pattern in the sky, the more unnatural the green light seemed to be. It lingered when the other colors faded away into the darkness of the night, like it had some strange phosphorescence. The odd viewing of the lights was interrupted when I heard a car approaching. I saw a large hearse driving down the path. It pulled up slowly and I could hear the pained grinding of the ancient vehicle, and it lurched to a halt behind my own car. A man stepped out. He was very tall and wore a jet black suit. Oddly, he also wore a pair of sunglasses that looked glaringly out of place in the dark night. He straightened his jacket and patted down his suit, and then he slid a hand back over his thin gray hair. He smiled when he saw me and walked over with a distinct, almost theatrical stride. He unlocked the gate, and as it swung open loudly, he sauntered over to introduce himself. "Oh, hello. Ben, was it? Pleased to meet you, Victor Penny. I'm the proprietor of this fine resting place. I trust you found the place all right." I shook his outstretched hand and he gripped me disturbingly tightly. He kept smiling and shaking until I let go and responded, "Yes, thank you, sir. Though I was afraid you might not be coming." Mr. Penny looked apologetic. "Oh, yes, I know. So sorry for the inconvenience. I had to make a last-minute drop-off and I was delayed, though I should give more credence to the living. After all, the dead can wait." He chuckled at his own words, like an inside joke. He laughed it off and shrugged. "Well then, shall we?" He gestured toward the gate and unlocked it with a large brass key. The gate swung open loudly, and the sound, coupled with the hellish visual of the fading light, made me feel like I was entering a dream. I shook off the impression and I followed. Mr. Penny had insisted that we walk, promising that the site wasn't too far. Though as we moved, I was struck by just how empty the place seemed to be. Only about a dozen gravestones lay scattered throughout the acres of grounds in all directions. As if reading my mind, Mr. Penny spoke as we walked. "You might notice the scarcity of graves here. Though our business is new, the lot is ancient. We have more residents here than it appears, but age, degradation, and a rather distressing incident have destroyed many of the plots and stones. We still keep the grounds but leave the others' resting places unmarked and undisturbed." I thought I saw that odd green light in the distance again before Mr. Penny pointed to a small building that we were moving past. "That is the groundkeeper's building. Old Horace tends the grounds in the day. You might see him on the way out on some nights, but he does not normally stay after dark. I nodded my head and we moved up the gentle hill towards a larger building in the distance. The green glow was gone and I started to wonder if I had really seen it at all. Mr. Penny spoke up again and pointed to the building. "Here we are. Please follow me if you would. The station is here and we'll discuss the job further, but the site that really matters is just a short way further up the hill. We'll get to that and more, assuming you agree to take the position." He smiled awkwardly and I was confused by the comment. I thought I was guarding the entire cemetery. Was there another site? The security station came into clearer view as we moved closer and I saw that it had a strange, almost tower-like lookout that jutted out of the roof, and giving it the impression of a lighthouse looking out over a vast ocean of forest and the dead. We walked up to the door and he fumbled with a large ring of keys. He glanced at me apologetically as he tried a few to no effect. Finally, the door opened on rusty hinges, and he held out a hand to invite me in. We walked inside and I saw that it resembled an empty cabin, like barely any furniture besides a table, a chair, and a small footlocker. It wasn't what I expected. I thought there might at least be a monitor and some security cameras. Near the corner I saw the only other door and a ladder that must lead to the odd lookout tower. The door closed behind us and it focused my attention back on Mr. Penny. "Well then, please take a chair, don't worry, I'll stand, seeing as how there is not an abundance of chairs." He chuckled half-heartedly, and I smiled slightly to not disappoint his attempt at humor. "Here at Aurora Ridge, we value hard work and integrity, but we need to know that we can trust you to do your best and not let fears get in the way of your contributions. So I must ask, are you afraid of the dead and their resting places?" I was taken off guard by the question, but I guessed it must be some sort of interview that he was doing first, and so I answered honestly. "No, I'm not afraid of the dead or cemeteries, sir." He smiled at my answer. "Well, good, very good. Do you believe in ghosts or spirits?" I replied, "No." Once again, Mr. Penny nodded his head and continued. "Good. You see, many employees have left this job in the past. It is not for the faint of heart. I know it seems straightforward at just guarding the grounds at night, but alone and in the dark." He paused, while fixing his stare on me and adjusting his sunglasses, but not taking them off. "While people forget themselves, start to see things, the mind gets tired, stories start becoming believable, and even skeptics can start to believe absurd things. And so I assure you, if you follow the rules and do not give in to crazy musings, you will do well." His smile was back and I was wondering how many people had this job before. Speaking of doing well, we pay well for this position. The stress it puts on the mind can be harrowing, and we like to offer our night guardsmen something akin to hazard pay. Therefore, we're willing to offer a salary of $3,000 a week. My jaw almost hit the floor when I heard how much it paid. I had no idea what sort of security job paid that much, but I was stunned by the offer. "Well, I see I have your attention. Good. I'll take that as a yes then." I was already nodding my head eagerly before he'd even gotten into the particulars of the job. "Well, good, very good." He smiled and held out his hand. I shook it without even thinking to ask why the pay was so significant and why he had called it hazard pay. "Well then, please if you would follow me. We have a special place to visit and I need you to listen closely. The instructions are paramount to your success." I nodded my head and opened a note app on my phone. Mr. Penny led the way on a small path, only lit by the dim light of a small row of solar stake lamps. We ascended the hill and the path led into what looked like a thicket. Mr. Penny walked on unbothered and gestured for me to follow. The small drape of plant life brushed away easily, and a somewhat concealed glen rested beyond. The area was hauntingly beautiful. Flowers grew around the soft green grass and fireflies danced around a small tree near the center of the glen. The pretty ambience distracted from the other key features in this tiny clearing, Near the center of the glen were 4 evenly spaced gravestones. They were fairly large but not imposing, and each one had a small string hanging above them connected to tiny bells. I thought it was odd, grave bells were not used anymore, since modern medical science had long since determined a way to verify if somebody was truly deceased. Beyond the 4 graves was a small but intricately detailed mausoleum. The sight of all the scenery was jarring. I took another step toward the surreal resting place. Suddenly, Mr. Penny grabbed my shoulder, holding me back momentarily. He was looking at me as if appraising my reaction. Beautiful, isn't it? An oasis of calm separate from the drudgery of life. Your first and most important job is keeping this place safe. I know you have many questions, but I'm going to explain the most important expectations regarding security here at Aurora Ridge. Failure to comply with them will result in consequences. Understood? I nodded my head at his sudden change of tone. Good, very good. I'll be sure to remind you of that commitment. In fact, your predecessor had to be terminated for failing to follow protocol. So if you wish to remain, you will listen carefully. He sounded serious, and I nodded my head and listened to the instructions. Your work hours will be 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. You're not allowed to leave until 6 a.m. unless expressly authorized. Breaks can be taken within reason, but you may not leave the grounds during breaks. You must stay at your post. Lunches must be brought in with you, no delivery services, of course. Bathroom breaks are of course permitted, but time should be strictly monitored. Sound systems should continue to be verified even during restroom breaks to ensure fast response should something happen. You are not to disturb the grounds directly. No going past or disturbing this line, especially no going near the graves. I looked to where he was pointing, and it was the small white line that seemed to stretch on to the left and right. My foot had almost crossed it, and I realized that was why Mr. Penny had stopped me. At first, it looked like it was drawn on like a football field, but I noticed when I looked closer that it seemed to be made of salt. Mr. Penny waited until I looked back up at him and continued. Absolutely no trespassers. We're closed at night. Any and all trespassers must be detained and dealt with. There is a channel on the radio that you must call if intruders are detected. Channel 6. Your job is observation. Other security personnel will detain them prior to removal by law enforcement. Understood? I nodded my head again and he moved on. As sometimes external influences can disrupt the lines of demarcation. If this occurs, please reapply any required amount of our security salt to ensure the ring stays whole at all times. This last rule is critical and you must abide. Are you paying attention? He asked sharply. I nodded my head and confirmed. If the graveyard bells ring, even if it's just one, you are to press the SOS button on your radio to signal the event. Then you must evacuate immediately. You will have exactly 3 minutes to make your way up the hill and to the mausoleum outside the ring. Then you are to use this key and enter the mausoleum. Close the doors and wait until morning. No earlier than 6 a.m. Do you understand? It was the strangest request so far. I had no idea why the bells would ring, unless somebody was buried alive. I couldn't help but ask after that one. But sir, why would they? He cut me off. They almost never do, but strange things can happen here. Even if you think it's just the wind, it's better to be safe than sorry. Go to the mausoleum, lock up and stay put. Any interaction with the bells after they ring, even waiting to watch what happens after the first 3 minutes will be a problem. Nothing will happen to you if you follow the rules. You understand? I was concerned and very skeptical, but I was more desperate to have a paycheck again. I figured I would follow whatever superstitious rules I was given if it meant not being broke anymore. I nodded my head and agreed. Yes. Mr. Penny beamed at my response. Excellent. Well then, if that's all settled, I'll show you to the tower. We have the watchtower there to keep a safe eye on the place while keeping a respectful distance. There are night vision binoculars, a directional microphone, and a radio there, along with spare batteries for the lot back in the security building. The station also has a small restroom which we've stored some extra salt in it as well, should you need to reapply it. Stay safe, stay observant, and you'll do great. Just please remember above all, watch the bells and listen for the bells. Follow the rules and you'll do just fine. He led me back to the building and I stepped inside. I saw the small footlocker that he mentioned the devices were in. When I turned back and saw Mr. Penny was not coming inside, he did an about face and smiled. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention. I need you to start tonight, I hope that's alright. I was surprised but felt like I couldn't say no without jeopardizing the opportunity, and so I reluctantly agreed. Yes, of course. Oh, fantastic, I knew that I was right about you. Take care and keep your eyes peeled and ears open. Have a good night, my friend. He closed the door and just like that, I was alone at my new job, watching over a small gravesite for an absurd salary and following a bizarre list of rules. I looked around again briefly and realized that I should probably head up the small tower and take a look from my vantage point. It sounded like I was going to spend most of my nights up there. I opened the footlocker near the ladder and removed a surprisingly nice and expensive-looking pair of night vision binoculars. I switched it on and the battery charge was full. There was also a small directional microphone, which had a wireless headset it connected to. I also grabbed the handheld radio and switched it on, and then I stowed the items and climbed the ladder to the lonesome tower. There was a small hatch separating the lookout from the interior of the tower, and I pushed against it so hard that I almost overbalanced and slipped. It was very heavy, but it creaked open on rusted hinges, and I felt the night air on my face as I emerged into the lookout. I pulled myself the rest of the way up and then lowered the hatch so that I would at least have a floor. I saw a folding chair nearby and was grateful that I was not expected to stand there for hours on end, though I regretted not bringing something to help pass the time. I hadn't expected to work late that night, but I consoled myself with the knowledge of the payday that I had in store. A few boring hours of watching some graves would be nothing. I grabbed the smaller chair, unfolded it, and set it up so that it would be facing toward the hill that I had to watch. When I sat down, I saw that I had a good view of the surrounding land. It was all positioned just right to see directly into the little glen that housed my charge. The moon shone bright so that I didn't have to rely on the night vision functions of the binoculars. I was just looking out for people, disturbances on the line, or the bells. After a while admiring the unaltered view, I turned on the night vision and the grayscale world opened up. I panned around the small graveyard on the hill and saw everything in sharper detail. While looking closer, I noticed something odd. None of the 4 special gravestones had any names, or any markings of any kind on them. They were all blank, and despite the beautiful and perhaps expensive exclusivity of that picturesque area, none of the occupants were recorded. I found it strange, but once again I did not question my fortune in guarding them. After an hour and a half, my eyes started to get tired constantly looking out at the site. The perimeter ring was undisturbed, nothing was moving about, barely even a breeze to disturb the dead silence of it all. I switched over to the directional microphone and pointed it at the site to confirm. As I had expected, there was nothing, at first, and then I thought I heard a low groaning, a creaking sound. It was like a tree branch scraping a window. The sound alone was odd but not too concerning. After a while, I started hearing another sound. It was a persistent scratching and tapping. It continued for half an hour and I was about to go investigate. And then it suddenly stopped just as I was about to go back down. I managed to make it through the rest of the night with no further issues. Almost the entire first week was uneventful, but on Friday something happened. I had my routine prepared and I had brought snacks, entertainment, and other things to pass the time while staying focused on my objective. I couldn't listen to anything since I had to keep an ear out for the bells on the microphone, but I was able to steal a few moments of time to read a book and to look at some videos that I had downloaded on my phone. I had to download them since the one signal bar that I got at the top of the lookout went in and out, so streaming was out of the question. I made it through almost the entire night, and I was so engrossed by the book that I was reading that I almost did not pick up on the sounds coming from the mic. It took me a second to realize that I was hearing voices. I propped the mic up so that I could still hear, and I grabbed the binoculars. I looked out at the graves and I didn't see anything at first. And then I saw a rustling in the foliage near the mausoleum and 3 figures emerged. I had to do something. They were heading for the site. I heard the voices speaking clearer now as I trained the mic directly onto them. How did we even get this far, Aaron? And what light are you talking about? It's too dark to see anything out here. The first voice spoke, sounding like a young man. Another one responded to the question curtly. Oh, I know what you saw, Jess. There was a weird green light. It was coming from here. It didn't look natural. Guys, we shouldn't be here. This place, there's something not right about it. Another voice spoke up, meek and concerned. She was right about one thing, they shouldn't be there. I had to figure out what to do. I remembered the instructions and switched on the radio to channel 6. This is Ben in the tower. There are 3 trespassers by the site, going down now to investigate. There was no response, so I just moved on, grabbing my flashlight and rushing downstairs. I opened the hatch and hurried down the ladder. I made it down in good time and I threw the door open, rushing up the trail towards the graves. I reached the glen and made it through just in time to see the 3 strangers stepping over the line. They all looked fairly young, 2 girls and a boy, probably in their teens. I shouted out a warning. Stop, this is private property. 2 of them held up their hands even though it was only a flashlight that I was holding. The third looked at me with a mixture of confusion and defiance. What is this place? The girl had asked, sounding like she was speaking while in a dream. The other 2 looked scared and confused. I spoke again, slightly softer than before. This is private property and it's a graveyard. You satisfied? Now clear off, you're not supposed to be here. I tried to sound commanding, but not overly hostile. Her 2 friends, I shrunk back, clearly not wanting to get into trouble. But she stepped forward and asked me a surprising question. I came for the light. Did you see it too? There was something in it and it called me here. I held my light up and shined it at her, and her expression looked oddly distant, as if she was speaking from somewhere else and with no emotion. The mention of the light was weird. I remembered the green light that I had seen the first day. Maybe this group had seen it too. I felt guilty for detaining them, but knew that I had to get them to leave. I stepped toward them slowly, lowered my hands, and tried to get them to listen. I'm not sure what light you think called you here, but you should all get back home. It is late and you look like high schoolers. Oh, your parents must be worried. Do you live close by? The girl in the middle, Erin, as I heard her friends call her, offered an odd response. I don't know. I can't remember. She sounded scared suddenly. The other 2 looked at her and then at each other. I shined the light on them again and I saw their eyes were glassy. I thought that they might have taken some psychedelics or something, since they didn't seem to be all there. But then when I looked closer, I saw a disturbing green light reflecting off their eyes. The effect was eerie, and I decided to lead them out of there. I hoped they had a number I could call to have their parents pick them up. I explained my plan to them and the stupor broke and they agreed. Yeah, let's go. I think it was a mistake coming here. Something's wrong with this place, I don't like it. the boy said as if waking up from a dream. The girls nodded and suddenly looked more lucid than when they had arrived. I was relieved and I started ushering them out. But before I could show the way back, I was startled when I heard a loudspeaker demanding that the group freeze. It was two large men in riot-style security gear. I didn't know why they were there, but then I remembered the radio call. I tried to explain the situation, but the two men brushed past me and seized two of the teenagers roughly. I tried to protest, but one of them knocked me down in the pursuit and I fell hard. Erin had tried to get away even while her friends had been grabbed, but as she reached the tree line, a third figure got a hold of her. It was Mr. Penny. The teens fought and struggled, and I didn't like the force that the others were using to detain them. Before I could voice my concern, Mr. Penny spoke. "Very good, Ben, nice work. Looks like we got here before they could do any damage beyond disrupting the assault. We will escort them off the premises." Thank you, sir. Maybe I could help. They don't seem like they came here to cause trouble. Maybe we can let them go without involving the police." Mr. Penny chuckled and then responded, "Oh, they should be so lucky. No, we'll let them go after they resalt the circle. Then we'll put them back where they belong. But you must not concern yourself since we are here and will be repairing the damage. You're free to go for the last few hours. Go home and get some sleep. I'll handle it from here." I didn't like the situation. I looked at the teens and they weren't shouting or protesting. They just seemed to be staring at the graves like they were in a trance. I thought that I saw the weird light emerging from the ground for a split second before it was gone. And then I saw the two men in riot gear holding large bags of salt. It looks like one of them was moving tools and I thought that I saw a shovel in his hands. My heartbeat quickened and I was getting nervous about what was happening. But as I was about to argue about going home, Mr. Penny stood up and walked over to me. He put an arm on my shoulder and turned me around to face him directly. I saw that he was holding his sunglasses in his hand, and I realized it was the first time that I had seen him take them off. "Oh, don't work too hard. Just go home. Now." I remembered looking up and facing him. After that, I don't remember what I saw. The next thing I knew, it was 6:15 in the morning. I was asleep in my car parked just outside my apartment. I had no recollection of how I got back. Somehow I had left, driven home, and fallen asleep in my car in those last 2 hours. Something was seriously wrong, but I had no way of explaining just what it was. I had wanted to talk to Mr. Penny about the strange experience, but he was absent for most of the next week. I grew more nervous about what had happened, but I kept going back. I did not like it, but felt like I had no choice. That weekend, I had another strange experience. Somebody was knocking on my apartment door on Saturday night. When I answered it, I saw a large bald man standing there. He stared at me for a moment before doing anything and then pulled out a small manila folder and handed it to me. I was confused, but when I looked, I saw that it had $3,000 in cash stuffed inside. The large man spoke in a dull and monotone voice. "Aurora Ridge thanks you for your work. Have a good evening." The man reached into his coat and pulled out a pair of sunglasses that looked a lot like Mr. Penny's. And just as he was about to place them on his head, I swear that I saw a glint of green that didn't look natural. He turned and walked away, and I was disturbed that my paychecks were going to be delivered in that manner. The only silver lining was the lack of any normal payroll process, which meant that I had more than I had expected due to the lack of taxes being withheld. When I returned on Monday night, I found that I had a visitor. It was not Mr. Penny, but an ancient-looking man who wore the dirt-speckled coveralls of the groundskeeper. He looked me up and down and scoffed as I entered. I waved to greet him and knew it must be Horace. He was holding a large bag of salt, and I saw several more in the corner. He finally spoke to me. "Oh, you must be Charlie's replacement. I haven't seen that big bald idiot around, but he owes me a pack of cigarettes. And though if you're here, it means old Charlie must have made a mistake. Anyway, it's windy tonight. I brought some extra salt. You're going to need it. And don't let the line break. I don't want that light anywhere near the garden or anywhere else where it can get into. Hey, don't forget, or it's your job. He brushed past me and shot me one last hateful look before departing, slamming the rattling door as he did. I was shocked and confused. What had happened to Charlie? Then I considered the large bald man I had not seen before who delivered my pay. He sounded a lot like this Charlie, but hadn't he been fired? Either way, it did not matter to me. I had to get to work. I climbed the ladder up to the lookout, and after the first 30 minutes, the wind whipped up so strongly that the lines of salt began to blow away and several sections were barren. I nearly spat out my coffee and knew that I had to get down there quickly. I rushed back down and grabbed one of the bags of salt that Horace had left. It was heavy and I wished that I had some way of moving multiple bags, but there was no dolly or truck to do so. I hefted the bag up the hill and opened it, moving to where I had seen the broken section of the ring, and I started pouring. As soon as I had finished, I saw that more sections required repair as well. I made several more trips and I was getting tired quickly. I knew that I had to do it, but still I didn't understand why it was so important to have the ring up at all times. I managed to patch all the larger holes in the line and felt like I had walked the perimeter a dozen times to check. There was one last segment that had a visible break, but I fell down huffing and puffing. I had to stop and catch my breath. Once I did, I could go get another bag and fix it. As I sat there and looked at the silent sight, I shuddered when I remembered the night where the teens had broken in. I hoped that Mr. Penny had let them go like he said he would. I didn't like the way they looked at the strange light, or how I had lost the last 2 hours of my night when I tried to ask him about it. I looked on, and as I caught my breath, I saw something inexplicable. There was a corona of that green light emerging from the ground near the edge where the break in the line was. I saw a small possum walk toward the light. It moved in a straight line and it didn't seem bothered by the fact that I was watching it. Then I saw the light. It seemed to stretch out and beyond the ring and reach out to the small animal. The glint of green that reflected in its eyes was terrible, and I stood up and rushed back down the hill to grab another bag and complete the circle again. When I got back, the animal was gone. I couldn't be sure, but I thought that I saw scratch marks on the ground near the ring, like something had tried digging there. I finished the ring and mercifully the wind had died down. As I tried to understand what had just happened, I heard something that froze my heart. I heard the chiming of a bell. I looked down in horror as one of the gravestone bells was slowly ringing. It was not the wind, it was not any external force. The bell was ringing and I had to act fast. I pressed the SOS button on the radio as I had been instructed, and I looked at the stone mausoleum nearby. A morbid part of me wanted to wait and see what was happening. It had to be some trick. It couldn't really be ringing on its own. Or worse, it couldn't be somebody buried alive. I had no time for questions. I remembered Mr. Penny's warning and I went to the mausoleum, searching for the silver key, and opened it. I was so fast that I had almost 2 minutes to spare of the 3 that I was told that I had. I took one last look outside and confirmed that the small bell was still ringing before closing the heavy door and locking it again, sealing me off from whatever was happening outside. I expected something at the 3-minute mark, but I heard nothing. There was no windows, so I couldn't see anything. But I swear that I saw that green light glowing softly from somewhere near the graves and peeking under the heavy door. I realized that I still had my headset for the directional mic turned on. I had propped the mic on the chair, pointing down at the graves while I moved the salt. When I put the headphones on, I heard an odd static. I wasn't sure what could be making the sounds, but after waiting for almost an hour, I heard something else. There was a consistent scraping, digging sound, followed by a loud crash, like someone hitting wood with metal. I held my breath, and after a long moment I thought that I heard a voice. "No, not yet. This one needs more time. They aren't ready. Just a bit more, put them back." And then I heard the wooden crash again, followed by more digging. After a while, all the sounds had fallen silent. I was left cold and alone in that dark tomb, terrified but ultimately oblivious to what had just occurred right outside. I considered asking Mr. Penny about the bells again, but I didn't know if I could trust whatever his answer might be. Whatever was going on at Aurora Ridge, it was getting more concerning by the day. I spent almost another entire week there in tense anticipation of something terrible happening. I was getting freaked out, and despite the large payday, I wasn't sure if it was smart to keep showing up. It was Thursday on week 3 that the reality of the situation was laid bare, and I saw the thing I could never unsee. It was a cold night, and I feared the wind would whip the salt off the ring again, or worse, that I would hear the bells ring out in the cold night air. I did not want to have to go near those graves in that mausoleum again, or see that glimmer of green light that they shone when you looked at them just right. I was already on edge. When I arrived and when I saw the rain beginning to fall, my mood did not improve. I climbed the ladder to my lookout and struggled to hear anything over the deluge of rain. I panned around with my binoculars and saw the hideous aurora of light emerging and reflecting the water in the air like a disturbing mono-colored rainbow. I wanted to look away, but the sight was captivating. I felt myself being drawn into the morbid spectacle, and I took an involuntary step forward. I managed to stop myself before I fell over the edge. Something clattered down the roof and smashed into the ground, and I realized that I had dropped the directional microphone. I cursed my bad luck, but was grateful that it had been that and not me that fell over. I looked over at the gravesite and saw something surprising. Despite the wind moving the salt the other day, the water from the rain did not seem to be dissolving the ring like I had expected. I was ready to bolt down and reapply it when I knew the rain was falling, but somehow it had stayed there unaffected. I tried to distract myself by reading for a while, but I was paranoid by the lack of a microphone. I had gone down to the Foot Locker to find another, but it was empty. There must have been only one. I tried the radio to call for help and get another, but all I got was static. Since I couldn't hear anything, I tried to be hyper-vigilant with the binoculars, and I looked around frequently. In another few hours, I was getting tired, but I was glad that the terrible night was almost over. All the coffee I had that night forced me to take a restroom break. When I got back up the ladder, I looked out again, expecting to see nothing but rain splashing off the ground. But instead, I saw movement. To my horror, I looked again and saw the gentle movement. It was 3 or 4 bells ringing side to side. I had no idea how long they had been at that point. I panicked. I pressed the SOS button on the radio and half climbed, half slid down the ladder, landing hard at the bottom. I sprinted up the hill, and as soon as I had entered the clearing, I saw that hellish light bathing the gravestones. The green glow seemed to pulse in time with the maddening chiming of the bells. I rushed to the mausoleum as the storm intensified. I fumbled for the keys but felt an odd tinge of static, and that in the next instant made me involuntarily fall back and throw the keys just after unlocking the mausoleum door. I was glad that I had leaped back, since in the next instant, a jagged bolt of incandescent green lightning struck the keys near the mausoleum and hit with such tremendous force that a large crack split a section off the front of the building. I looked up in a terrible instant and saw the storm had taken on an otherworldly quality that made me dizzy to look at. I picked myself up and dove into the mausoleum, closing the heavy door behind me. As I tried to catch my breath after the insane events, I felt a chill and I realized that something was wrong. The structure was damaged and I could see through the fractured facade of the wall. I could see everything now. and what I saw was a large group of hooded figures gathered around the gravestones. One wore those distinct sunglasses of Mr. Penny. Others had shovels and were digging at the ground by the gravestones. Piles of dirt were dug up and cast aside as they moved deeper. I heard 3 shovels striking wood in unison. I looked on in numb horror as the green lightning struck the ground around where they had dug up 3 of the 4 graves. They bent down in unison and pulled the caskets out. I wasn't able to see who or what was in the coffins, but something about the way that they stood around them was disturbing. I heard a ringing sound in my ears and a loud voice spoke out. It was terrible and commanding, and I was shocked when I saw that it was Mr. Penny who seemed to be speaking in a voice that sounded nothing like his own. "Bring them forward." 2 of the hooded figures brought a limp body up towards him, and I nearly cried out when I saw the body and I recognized the girl. It was Erin, one of the teens who had broken in with her friends to see the light. She was unresponsive, but Mr. Penny reached down and touched her head. And then the 2 robed figures moved her body up toward him, and he took off his glasses and I suppressed a horrified gasp as I saw the empty pits that hid underneath. He looked like he should be blind. He had no eyes, yet he reached out to touch the face of the young girl, and a terrible green light filled his hollow eyes and seemed to run down his hands and flow like a terrible river into Erin's limp body. And then the eldritch green light flashed, sparked, and a dull rumble was heard, followed by a gasp of air. She was alive, but as her eyes fluttered open, I saw the same green eyes glowing with an inhuman fire. They were about to repeat the ritual when I heard mutterings and one of the robed figures asked Mr. Penny about the 4th grave. He held up a finger and then pointed in my direction at the mausoleum, and all I could hear was, "Soon." I huddled down, unable to look at the scene any longer. The sound of a bell ringing began to make my head pound and I was struggling to breathe. I blacked out the next moment. When I woke up, it was morning. I stole a peek outside and saw that the grave sites were just as they had been before. Undisturbed, even the soil looked unbothered. I started to wonder if it could have all been just a terrible nightmare. I inched closer, almost crossing the line of salt, and saw no evident trace of anything. No footsteps, no disturbed earth. Even the grass looked healthy and untouched. I rubbed my eyes in disbelief, slowly turned around and laughed. I drove home in a daze, conscious but bewildered. When I got back, I tried to process what I saw last night. I decided to look into Mr. Penny and see if I could find something out about him and what the hell kind of operation he was running. When I started looking, I was horrified at my revelation. Victor Penny, the original owner of Aurora Ridge Cemetery, had died 85 years ago. No known descendants and no family. I remembered the hollow eyes from that night, the green flames burning in his skull. And then I saw on the news that 3 teens had been reported missing, and when I saw their faces and heard their names announced, my heart sank. It was the 3 from that night. All of them had been standing right in front of me a little over a week ago. The implications made me sick when I considered the graves, 3 of them, 3 people taken, 3 bells ringing out, and then the sight of one of them screaming back to life in the hands of Mr. Penny. I stayed home that night. I couldn't sleep and the nervous tension made me paranoid. I started writing and somebody knocked on my door. It was nearly midnight and I grabbed a kitchen knife on my way to check the front door. I looked out the peephole and I nearly gasped aloud when I saw the face of that young girl, Erin. She was standing there outside my door, smiling. I almost reached for the door, but as I did, she spoke. "Hello, Ben. Please remember to call out if you're feeling sick in the future. Don't forget it's payday tomorrow. We have something for you back at Aurora Ridge. Please come back. It won't take long and you can finally find a place where you belong. Think of the light, the bell. The last one can be for you. The experience is breathtaking. Take the night and think it over. Mr. Penny was right. I can see things now. things that I could never see before. You can too. She left at some point and I was alone again. That was last night. I have not left my house since. They keep showing up, beckoning me back to that place where souls have returned to bathe in that monstrous light that claims the living and the dead. In the distance, I swear that I could hear the bell, the fourth one chiming away, calling me to the deepest parts of the earth to find out the secrets of the realm of dark stone and death. The sound is getting louder, but I will try and ignore it tonight. I need to finish this account. I need to warn others away from that realm of death and rebirth. The light is in my apartment now. I know it is, and the ringing sound is making me feel numb. It's calling to me, and I don't know if I can hide forever. I need to rest now and pray to God that I'm still here when I wake up.